During fabrication, you will find it necessary to touch up the edge of your knife. You're cutting through a lot of meat and bone tissue. It is important to have a sharp knife so that you can work quickly and efficiently, but it is also important for safety. You use less force when your knife is sharp, so you'll minimize the danger of slipping. Also, be sure the handle is clean and dry. Chef's knives are used for cutting through bone and sometimes for flattening pieces of chicken. Poultry shears are used for cutting through smaller bones and connective tissue. Try to avoid splintering the bone as you cut through it. Use firm but moderate force. For the best control and safety, use a boning knife for most of your fabrication procedures. Since there is such a wide variety of boning knives, you should use what's most comfortable for you. Depending upon the task, you'll need to use different grips and parts of the blade. When fabricating boneless, skinless breasts or legs, use the tip of your knife. Stay close to the bone so you can remove as much of the edible meat as possible. Remember the importance of sanitation. Thoroughly clean and sanitize your knives often.
The next technique that we're going to get into is we're going to split a chicken in half. By cutting that chicken in half, it's going to be especially used for broiling or for grilling. If the bones are left intact in that half a chicken, it helps to maintain the moisture in the finished product, and it also helps to prevent shrinkage during that cooking process. First thing we want to do is remove the giblet bag. Then we're going to cut the wings off at the second joint. Now there's a couple of different ways that we can split the chicken in half. The idea is to remove the backbone. We could use poultry shears, and starting at the tail, start to cut down. I like to use the boning knife. What we're going to do is we're going to stand the chicken up on the end and grab hold of the tail. With a boning knife, we're going to start at the tail here. We're going to make a line on both sides of the backbone, approximately 3/4 of an inch wide. We're going to apply pressure with the boning knife down. At the same time, we're going to pull the tail up. As you can hear, we're cutting through some bones right there. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Apply pressure down and pull up. We're going to remove the backbone. We're going to reserve the backbone to make stock. So we look inside the cavity of the chicken. We see the keel bone, also known as the breastbone right here. Above the keel bone, we see a white membrane. That is a collagen membrane. With the tip of your boning knife, just cut that collagen membrane and then run the tip of your knife down the keel bone, just to loosen that up. Put your fingertips up underneath the breast, and in a downward motion, you're going to snap the chicken in half. You're going to expose the keel bone, or that breastbone. Run your finger on either side of the bone to loosen it up. Grab the entire bone, and with a rotating motion, actually pull the full breastbone away. We're going to reserve that also to make stock. Now we can cut the chicken in half. The next thing we want to do is we're going to cut the end of the drumstick bone off, approximately a ½ inch. We're going to do that with the heel of the French knife. We're going to put a slit in the loose skin here by the thigh. We're actually going to put the end of the drumstick into that slit. Now we want to trim away any excess fat and excess skin that we have. The broiled half chicken is an old classic, but it can be adapted beautifully for today's consumers, as with this spicy chicken Diablo. What we're going to do here is we're going to cut this chicken up into 8 pieces, getting it ready for the barbecue or also for that classic coq au vin. First, cut the chicken in half, as we did earlier. What we want to do now is split those into quarters. It's very easily done. As you can see here, there's a natural crease between the leg and the breast. At that natural crease, you're just going to split that in half. Now we have 4 pieces. To split the thigh from the drumstick, As you can see on the inside, there's a fat line here that separates the thigh from the drumstick. Right underneath that fat line, you're going to find the natural joint. Take your knife, cut through that fat line, remove any visible fat or skin. Again here. And now we want to remove the wings from the breast. You want to try to stay as close to that wing joint as possible. So with the tip of your boning knife, be very careful. Outline the joint of the wing until you expose the white ball of the joint. And then cut through. The idea is to leave as much meat on the breast as possible. There's the joint. Cut right through that. And now we have our 8 pieces. Enjoy all of these fabricated cuts with a casual barbecue. What we're going to do next is remove the legs and thighs from the carcass of the whole chicken. I move the legs back and forth. You're going to see a natural seam in here, a natural separation of where the legs are actually attached to the breast. What we want to do is we want to cut the skin at that point. It's very important that you don't cut the skin high on the breast. We want to keep the breast covered with as much skin as we possibly can so it retains its moisture during the cooking process. So at the natural seam, or the natural joint here, we're going to cut the skin on both sides. You turn the chicken over, and the backbone right here, you're going to place your fingertips of one hand on the backbone, and you're going to grab the joint of the thigh with the other hand. We're actually going to snap it down. We're going to expose the ball of the thigh bone. That's actually the ball that is attached to the hip bone inside the chicken. Put the chicken on its side. Starting at the tail, follow the contour of the backbone down until you expose the socket. Okay, this is the socket where the ball of the thigh bone was attached. Just past that socket, you're going to stop, and you're going to put your knife down at that area, and you're going to rock it back and forth. The idea of rocking it back and forth is to break any connective tissue or membrane holding a very delicate parcel of meat that's inside that hip bone. That's called the oyster meat. So now you're going to hold the chicken down with your knife, grab the thigh as low as possible, and with a rotation motion of your wrist, pull backwards. What we're doing is we're pulling that oyster meat away from the inside of the hip bone, and then cut it away. Again, you want to be very careful when you're pulling that you do not pull too hard, because we do not want to pull the skin off the breast. And we'll do the same thing with the other side. Exposing the ball of the thigh bone, starting always at the tail, working your way down to the socket, rock back and forth, rotate your wrist backwards, and you're going to pull that very small, very delicate morsel of meat called the oyster right out of that hip bone. And now we have 2 legs. Some preparations may require you to remove the skin from the chicken leg, and it's done very simply. You're going to measure approximately 1.5 inches down from the end of the drumstick bone here. And you're going to make a circular cut all the way around. The intent of this is to remove all of the connective tissue and all of the tendons that are connecting that meat and skin to the bone of the drumstick. Again, that can be done with a cutting and a scraping motion of the knife. With the chicken leg down and the skin on the upper side, all you're going to do is grab the skin from the thigh and actually rip the skin away from the chicken leg. You want to remove any visible fat and any particles of skin that may remain. Now we have a completely skinless chicken leg. Now that we have the chicken leg completely skinless, what we want to do here is remove all of the bones. We're going to use the same technique that we use to make the leg semi-boneless and skinless. So we had that ready for stuffing, but now we're going to get the leg ready for stir fry. You're going to cut down the middle of the thigh bone, right up here, up on top. you can see the ball of the thigh bone facing upwards. And that is the part where you want to begin. You're going to use, again, the tip of your knife and work on both sides of that thigh bone. You can use the scraping motion, as we used before, to remove a lot of the meat up on top. Now, with the drumstick bone, you're going to do the same thing. Use only the tip of your knife, cut down one side of the drumstick bone to the joint that connects the thigh bone to the drumstick, and then we're going to cut down the opposite side of the drumstick bone to the same joint. Again, only using the very tip of your knife, and we're going to use that scraping motion. Once we have the meat loosened from both sides of both bones, we're going to go up underneath the thigh bone and loosen any meat under there. We're also going to go up underneath the drumstick bone and to loosen that meat. Again, using the tip of your knife, you're going to work around the bone to that joint that connects the two together. Stay as close as you possibly can to the joint. We're going to free all the meat away. And now we have the boneless leg. There's several different things you can do with the boneless chicken leg at this point. You can stuff it and roll it, similar to the technique that we did earlier. You can also use it as a stir fry. Cut them into strips and cook them in a wok with cashews and broccoli, for example, for an Asian style stir fry.